Everyone ready?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, ready? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Harrison Township Planning Commission meeting. Today is Thursday, March 20th, 2014. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Roll call, please, Mr. Bloom.
Sure. Member McDougal, I understand is excused.
Excused absent?
Member Tominello. I understand
Excused
also
absent?
excused. Yep. Member Fowl.
Here.
Member Batcha.
Here.
Member Bloom present. Member Olgiati.
Here.
Chairperson Murray.
Present. Thank you. May I have approval of the agenda as presented, please?
Madam Chair, I would make a motion to approve the agenda as written for March 20th. March 20th, 2014.
I have a motion. May I have a second, please?
Support.
Mr. Batcha. Motion by Mr. Folk, seconded by Mr. Batcha. All in favor?
Aye.
Approved? Nays? None? The agenda is approved. May I have approval of the meeting minutes from February 20th, 2014? Or please indicate your changes, if any.
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the meeting on February 20th, 2014 as written.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second that.
Mr. Bloom. Motion by Mr. Folk, seconded by Mr. Bloom to approve the minutes of February 20th, 2014. All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? None. Motion approved. Hearing and reviews. Our first hearing, Mr. Bloom, please.
Sure. The first hearing is a public hearing, case number 05-14-SLU, Belmar Harbor, 41700 Conger Bay, Harrison Township, Michigan, zoned waterfront for a 12 boat rack storage addition to building number 4.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Seeing as this is a public hearing, may I have a motion to open the public hearing, please?
I'll move to open the public hearing.
Mr. Batcha?
I'll second.
Mr. Olgiati. Roll call, please, Mr. Bloom.
Sure. Member Batcha.
Yes.
Member Olgiati.
Yes.
Member Fowl.
Yes.
Member Bloom votes yes. Madam Chair.
Yes. Motion carries. Okay, our public hearing is open. We have received a set of plans, a letter from Mr. Foster with the 8 special requirements, our standard requirements, a set of plans, and several letters. Mr. Foster, would you like to come up and
Good evening. I'm Eric Foster, General Partner of Belmar Harbor, also a Harrison Township resident at 32127 Riverdale. And what we were asking to do is to add 12 racks to an existing rack building that has 108 racks in it. And this one would be in the outside corner. The building, I think you're now pretty familiar with it, is shaped kind of like a cross because inside getting the boats out, you can't use the corners to get in there. So what we've got is a southwest corner in the outside. We're proposing to have 3 boats abreast, 4 high, just as it is inside the building, and that would add 12 more boats. I guess the reason being is that we're full in the rack building. I sent some of the statistics. 28% of the racks right now are second boats for boaters at Belmar, or in one case from a neighboring harbor, Mac Ray. And we've got a waiting list, so we've got people that would like to get in there, and of that waiting list, a third of them are our boaters that would like to have a second boat at the marina, and that's where they'd like to keep it. More and more, you're finding people are using boats for floating cottages, and so what they're doing is they're getting smaller boats that they kind of go out and play in, and they really sleep and live on their larger boats.
Okay. Well, we can give the public an opportunity to come up and speak, and we'll collect all questions and then tackle those at the end. You can make yourself comfortable wherever you like. Would anyone like to come up and speak to this item? This is a public hearing. This is time for your public comments. Mr. Bardell.
William Bardell, 18-year resident. I think in 2014, I think we should have a PowerPoint on this here. The year's 2014. And I think that everyone needs to see what's going on right up on that screen, on those phones, whatever, them yuppie phones, boom, boom, boom. Put it up on the screen. It's 2014.
Thank you, Mr. Bardell. Anyone else? Good evening, Mr. Sunstock.
I don't have to introduce myself,
No, you can. For the record.
but I will.
Okay.
I'm Jim Senstock, 31698 San Juan. I'm here as the president of the Venice Shores Property Owners Association, representing the VSPOA board as authorized at our 3/5/14 meeting. Venice Shores currently has 271 homeowners located in the association, and we're here to oppose the 12 boat rack addition to the existing 102 rack storage located on the south side, directly adjacent to at least 70 homes in our subdivision. It is our belief that it will have a detrimental effect on those homeowners, and due to the increased noise, the backup beeper, the diesel engine noise, and the fumes generated. Currently, residents have been denied the use of their homes, backyards, patios, as well as being woke up in the morning by the early morning operation of the Wiggins fork truck. It should be noted that this use was approved in 1984. It was intended by ordinance to be contained in a building so that no noise would be projected at the neighbors. As currently operated, the large south door facing the subdivision is left open all day long. And the truck uses the east-west road to the south of the building continuously, creating the noise and fumes, etc. This submission was made in addition to the noise problem. This is, as made, has several defects. The site plan as submitted does not designate where the additional parking requirement will be met for these 12 units. There are several other requirements under section 7.02 1C, submission requirements, which are missing. The submission for special land use is required under Article 11, Section 11, B10, because it is deemed necessary to the preservation of health, safety, welfare, and that certain uses be specifically controlled because they serve an area outside the market, outside the general township area, and or create particular problems of control in relation to adjoining uses. So that's why we're here. It's a special land use, and they're asking it. It also says in the ordinance, special land use approval, and then only as specifically allowed, and I emphasize the word specific. Section 1338, stack in and out storage, item B, lists the specific requirements and conditions. Item 1, all stack storage and in and out boat storage, including storage racks and access to said racks, shall, which is a mandatory term, be enclosed in a building. No such stack storage or access to such stack racks can be maintained on the grounds of the premises outside the building. That's a very specific requirement in the ordinance. It was put there for a reason, and that's to eliminate the use or the potential use that problems that we're having at Venice Shores. Clearly, Mr. Foster has indicated that his use will not be inside a building. In all of his application and so on, he said that it will not be taken inside. In addition, the rack storage is 36 feet high. That was approved in July 17th, 1984 by the ZBA. And it appears that Mr. Foster feels that if he gets a special land use, he gets an automatic variance. That is not the case. He has to go in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals because we currently require everybody with a variance. If they want to add to that variance, they have to go in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Standard 2, okay. At this point, then, I'd like to address the review requirements that are outlined in his letter as well as in our ordinance. And I'm only going to hit the ones that we actually have a problem with. Standard 1 basically says that you have to follow all the rules and that you are following all the rules. Well, I've already outlined that that's not the case. Standard 2, the large Wiggins fork truck, and it is large, with a boat on it, it's even a lot larger, will maneuver at right angles to vehicle and pedestrian traffic from over 95 wells located on the access road north of the rack storage building. I believe it's called the Griffin Docks. In addition, the parking for rack storage is located in Building 5, and the pedestrians will have to cross the area used by the large fork truck to get to their boats. So they obviously are not meeting the standard 2. The outside racking boats will be clearly irritating to the occupants of nearby uses. The addition of 12 racks to the existing 102 is a 12% increase in boat trips. The problem is that the boat trips are not inside a building. They're going to be running to the west side of the building and then back to the south door. So they're going to be outside a lot more than the boats that are in the building are currently. So instead of a 12% increase in noise for most of the people, I've suggested it probably could be as much as a 20% increase in noise and fumes, etc. Mr. Foster, in his letter, basically said that made allegations that Venice Shores is promoting the idea that this will add to the use of the lake and that we don't want that. That couldn't be further from the truth. At our board meeting, the only issue that came up in our board meeting was the noise and fume issue emanating from his site over there. We don't care if there's additional boats on the lake. In fact, we welcome it. He also indicated in his letter that he didn't feel, for item number 3, that this was us considering the noise and so on was within the scope of the special land use requirements. The special land use requirements were specifically put there to consider just those kinds of things, so it is within the scope. Standard 6, the expansion, proposed expansion is not necessary for the public convenience at this location. Calls were made to several marinas serving the Anchor Bay area earlier this week. These marinas, Hideaway Harbor, Land's End, Beacon Cove, all in Harrison Township, Seaway Marina and Anchor Bay Marina on the Salt River, and Schmidt Marina in New Baltimore, all have space available in rack storage buildings. If Mr. Foster wants to service his floating cottage owners, then I suggest he make a business decision to limit his rack storage to only current customers of Belmar Harbor instead of expanding what he's got. Item number 7, or standard 7, he indicates that they will, these will not affect any of the people in the marina. Well, we are contending that it does in fact affect some of the people in the marina, whether they stand up and say something or not, but it is affecting us. And he has to affect, if he's affecting us, then he doesn't meet this criteria. Standard 8, whether or not the current operation causes substantial injury and will be detrimental to existing permitted land uses, residential homes in this case, in the zoning district. Homeowners regard listening to diesel and backup beaver noise as fumes from April 14th through October 15th as detrimental. Those dates are outlined by Mr. Foster in his letter. Potential home purchasers will regard the inability to sleep in late, which I like to do, by the way, not being able to open their windows or use their patios, backyards, and barbecues without noise pollution they will consider that as a factor in any offer they make to purchase a home in the affected area, if they in fact even make an offer. Finally, VSPOA has supported and appreciated many of the buildings, updates, and activities which have been made at Belmar Harbor. We do, however, strenuously oppose this additional rack storage. We believe that this will be a prelude to Belmar coming back in the future with additional proposals to fill in the remaining 3 corners of the cross rack storage building with another 36 units. And then claiming that there's a precedent, you guys already approved this, this is just a slam dunk. We don't agree with that. It should be noted that the standards, all 8 of those standards must be met. And the word in the law is must be met, all 8 of them. So if any one of them is not met, then this special land use should go down. I would like to ask on behalf of several snowbirds who are not back yet and couldn't attend this hearing, if a decision is not reached tonight and it's going to be reached at the next meeting, that the public hearing, this public hearing, be held open to the next PC meeting to allow them to speak. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Senstock. Mr. Bardell.
William Bardell. I got a comment. I wonder why this meeting was not on the calendar on the internet. Also, I know we've got more people on the planning commission. What I'd like to know is if you've got alternates. If somebody's here, they're not there, I see them, they're not, they're here, they're not. Get some alternates in, people that want to do it, people that have a passion for the township and that are going to be here every single meeting and want to do it. If they don't want to do it and they want to bowl or play darts, that's fine. But if they're on the planning commission, you go to the planning commission. You do that. That's what you do.
Thank you, Mr. Bardell.
Okay? Thank you.
Excuse me. Anyone else?
Yes, good evening. My name is Frank Forner. I live at 41699 Windmill. I am the last house on Windmill. I am directly behind the marina. I sit out in my backyard. I do not hear the noises what Jimmy's indicating that the neighbors are hearing. I've lived there for 35 years. I knew when I was moving into that neighborhood, there was a marina there already. So, and they have been very good neighbors. Occasionally, we've had some problem with noise from the boaters. I've made contact with Belmar, whether it's through Eric or Jim Kraus, or even the guard shack. The noises have subsided. Like I say, we've never had a problem with anything in reference to the Wiggins or the noise or the fumes from machinery. I've got a diesel boat. When I start that diesel boat, it stinks more than that thing does. So in consideration, I'm in favor of it.
Thank you, Mr. Forner. Excuse me.
I'm Don Witkowski, 26090 Hawthorne, Harrison Township. Been a resident here for 32 years. I also own 2 boat wells at Belmar Marina. The gentleman just talked about the noise and the fumes. He's across the canal. My first boat well was within 75 feet of the building. So if anybody should be upset, it would be me. I don't hear the noise. The smell is literally none because of the fact of government regulations and emission controls on these high-lows. I look at the tax base that will be brought into the township to help develop the township, roads, whatever, because of the increased rack storage. I look at the businesses that will benefit from this, the restaurants, the convenience stores, the gas stations. These are all pluses. The 12 boats, again, we're looking for additional rack storage. I would be in full support of this movement. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments? This is your chance to speak. Okay.
My name is Ron Verhelli. I have a unit on Griffin.
And what was your last name, please?
Ron Verhelli. I have a unit on Griffin, the end row of where these wells are proposed, or the racks are proposed. So it would directly affect me. And I've been at the marina since '92, and I actually started with rack storage. And I don't have a boat that I would like to put in there, but I'm in full support of this. And I would think that if there's going to be a concern for either the fumes or the noise, we have a row that's much closer than Venice Shores, and if there's anyone that would have complaints there, I would think they would be here tonight voicing their concern, since that row is much closer than the Venice Shores. So I would be also in full support of this rule. And as far as the other side of the building, where it was said there could be an expansion, those are where racks are right now, and those are used for working on the boats during the daytime, and I don't think there would be any room for expansion or more rack ability to be working over there. So
Thank
I
you.
would be in full support of this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Vanelli. Excuse me.
Good evening. My name is John Oftring. I live in Harrison Township at 33120 Venetian Point Drive at the end of the Clinton River. My history with Belmar Marina began back in 1970 when we came to Harrison Township. My mother and father owned the gas docks at Blue Lagoon when there used to be 2 sets of gas docks, one at the bridge end and one at the lake end. When we moved out of the marina and Eric Foster and Mark Howard came into the marina, we retained a group of slips at the end of Joss Row. My family still owns a group of slips at the end of Joss Row. Since Mark Howard and Eric Foster came to Belmar, there's been nothing but continuous improvements, both aesthetically and ecologically. Eric has put his best foot forward in trying to maintain an ecologically attractive marina. He's abided by all of the rules by the EPA and the state of Michigan. As far as what Eric is proposing with this additional 12 boats, it's very unfortunate that the folks from Venetian Shores haven't been there as long as we have and seen the gestation that Eric Foster and Mark Howard have done as Belmar. I'm also on the board at Belmar, completely unrelated to the management group of Belmar, which be Eric Foster and those folks. I represent a group of people who own slips in Belmar. Obviously, we're all for this additional 12 racks, strictly based on the past performance that Eric Foster has brought to Harrison Township. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you.
Good evening. Mark Prusatis, 38044 Seaway. I'm not a slip owner at Belmar. I've got a number of friends that have slips there. I do purchase transient wells over the past couple of years, and I can tell you it's one of the finest marinas in the area. I would not want to go anywhere else. I do have a boat I'd love to have in rack storage, and unfortunately, because they're out of space, I can't do that. I have always felt extremely secure at that marina. The facilities there are very nice. The security is very nice. And I think that if those racks were to go in, it would be a benefit to the boaters in the area. I think it would be a positive move. And I'm sure that Eric and the security over there would make sure that there's no safety issues at all with having those racks installed. So I'm all for it, especially since we're on the waiting list.
Thank you, Mr. Terrace. Excuse me. Anyone else? Well, what I neglected to indicate, one moment, Mr. Berto. What I neglected to indicate in the beginning is that as a public hearing, we take all of your information. We are in the fact information collecting stage of the special land use. And we are taking all information and we will use it along with everything in our ordinances to make a decision. So if anyone else has anything to say, now's the time. Mr. Bardell, and please keep it related to what we
Yes,
discussed.
what I want to say is I think we should keep this public hearing open because of the fact that this meeting was not on the calendar, nor was the agenda on there. So nobody knew about this meeting. The only people who knew about this meeting were the people in favor of it, for some reason or another. Just saying. So I would appreciate these meetings being on the calendar, on the internet in 2014. That's the year it is. That you click on, you get the agenda. Okay? Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Bardell.
I believe we should keep this hearing open, so everybody has a chance.
Thank you. Excuse me. And-
Madam Chair, may I speak?
Yes.
Just to, the notice was put in the paper. I sent out over 500 notices to everyone within 300 feet of the subject property, and the agenda is on the internet, on the website. So it has been noticed.
The current agenda is,
I'm not going to argue that
okay.
point.
Okay, Mr. Bardell, okay. Thank you, Sabrina. Okay, at this point, does anyone else have anything, any other comments? Mr. Foster, would you like to share more information, please?
Yeah, it just, you know, they sent out to all of the condo owners, and I think I sent you a copy of the aerial map and,
Yes.
you know, distances. Within 1,000 feet, virtually every single slip in our marina is there. And, you know, we have no problem people coming back to the building, owning those slips. They're all there all the time. And I just asked the people, you know, we had a few condo people that showed up, but I asked them and I got back in like 52 responses, you know, of the people that own wells there out of 406. And all of them, you know, were saying, you know, we don't even hear the beeper. You know, now whether they're used to it, I don't know. But we cannot, I would have come in for more than one corner if I could have, because I would have liked to have done the northwest corner. We don't have enough room there. We're backing into parking where the condo parking is. So, you know, it's just impossible. I would have liked to, you know, done that. So the other side, as was mentioned, we do have racks on the outside. There's 8 racks on the other side of the building, which would be the east side of the building. And what those are for, because the boats are stacked, they can't wash their boats, they can't do any work on their boats. They have to be taken out and put on a side rack. So if they want to wash it or they want somebody to come work on it, it has to be done there. So we are using the machine outside. Also, I've got a second machine. We have to in case there is a breakdown. But that second machine is used for every project that we have to use where you have to get off the ground. We have a platform made for that, and so that machine is used without. And the reason what I was saying is that the machine itself basically is outside the scope of the special land use. You know, the machine is used at the marina for other things, you know, and it's gonna be used, you know, for, you know, what's there already. That's the type of equipment we have to have. We've been running this now for 29 years, and, you know, knock on wood, we've not had any accidents with this. And part of it is because of the beeper. You know, I just, that's something, we got a gentleman who's driving that, he's up high, he's gotta watch the boat on the forks. You know, there's gotta be some sort of audio when he's backing up, just so if somebody is coming by. Now, again, what they mentioned on Griffin, yes, we'll have a, once in a while, rack, going out for a rack on the outside, on the west side now, that we don't have, but we have much more activity on the east side, and that's going across the condo lane also, that's Elko. And we've never had a problem in all those years. As far as trying to skirt the law, you know, I frankly didn't know Mark handled it, and it's been so many years ago, and it wasn't until I helped the township look up what the date was, I went back and found the actual checks that I issued for that at the time. I didn't even remember that it was ZBA, so all I'm doing is I'm trying to follow, you know, they said go to, you know, Planning Commission, I did that, then they said come here, so I'm here. I'm not trying to skirt anything, I'm just trying to follow directions on this. But we do have, you know, regardless of what that says, there are several other locations in Harrison Township that have open-ended stacked racks, and we also have others that have racks out in the open that are for seasonal rental. It's already existing throughout the township. And again, we had a lot of the comments that I got from you from the condo owners stayed in there that how few times we have boats out actually there. Even on the busiest weekend, if we have 25% of the boats out, that's tremendously high. So again, I think it's being blown out of proportion somewhat there. I also did have some of the other homeowners that send in letters or emails to me that I sent along to you. So again, I think some of it's being blown out of proportion on this.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Anything else relative to the building or the addition? Okay.
Hi, it's Jim Senstock again. 31698 San I just wanted to address a couple things, and you know, it's kind of turned into a little bit of an us versus them thing, and it's too bad because we have worked very well with Mark. I've worked with him in the past.
Mark's dead.
I mean, yeah, thank you. I keep calling you Eric. But I didn't work very well with Mark. So I don't want it to turn into a us versus them or Jim Senstock versus Eric Foster or whatever. The fact is that the law is very specific. Whether they're doing it somewhere else or not makes no difference. Somebody dropped the ball then. And probably the reason they dropped the ball at that time is because most of these other open racked storage areas, if there are some, I'm not aware, I haven't actually looked at them, are not adjacent to a residential subdivision. So there was nobody to complain. There is in this case. And, you know, some of these people say, no, a lot of these people never, you know, weren't there when it started and all that. Well, I've been there since 1964. So I've been there through the whole thing, through the old Blue Lagoon Marina, through all of it. Through the high water and the low water, and we had some really low water. So I'm aware of what's going on over there just as well as, for instance, Eric is. But the fact is, I live at least 1,500 to 2,000 feet away, and if I go out of my backyard, I hear the beeper down there. Now, it doesn't bother me. I mean, it's background noise, and I personally, to tell you the truth, if that was all I was gonna hear, I don't have a problem. But I would have a problem if it was within 400 feet of my house. I like to get up at 9 o'clock, 9:30 in the morning. He starts at 8 o'clock in the morning. And that beeper is just like, that's what you put on an alarm clock, a beeper. So, don't pass it off as it's not meaningful. If somebody wants it because of their friendships, because of their business relationships or whatever, and they want to support Eric, that's fine. But if you had to live there and you had to listen to it, and I have been down to the houses down there that are down in that area down there, and I've remarked on it several times to the people. Boy, how do you put up with this? And you know what? If you're going to sell a house in that area down there, you better make sure that your real estate lady knows not to come on the days they're going to be running the tractor. Oh, geez, how are you going to tell that in the summer? You can't.
Anything new? Anything?
No, I just wanted to reemphasize that I've been there long enough to know what's going on. And we have had complaints from the neighbors. Some of them are not available to be here. Some of them are too shy to be here. They let Big Mouth Sunstock go out and say something. But it is a problem. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I will take this opportunity to make sure that the tons of emails that we received in favor and not in favor will become a part of this public hearing. I will not read all of them. I don't think I need to, since they've been submitted to the secretary, so they are automatically a part of this public hearing, as referenced right now. So we will include those. Excuse me. It is true that this building was sought to be built back in 1984, and a variance was sought at that time for height. So that is true. In fact, I have the minutes of that ZBA approval here. Any other information? Any other questions? Any other comments? Okay, board, any questions or comments for the applicant?
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Mr.
Um,
Buchanan?
In regards, it seems like one of the big things that is being brought up is the noise. On that Wiggins forklift, are there any preventative measures that you can do in regards to OSHA about the backup beeper? Is there any type of a sonar that can be put on there where it only beeps when somebody's within that path, or does it have to be a constant beeping?
Well, since it came up, now I'm trying to find that out, to tell you the truth. In fact, I had one of our condo owners, he had gone online as I had, to see. I think what it's going to take is to get OSHA, unfortunately out there. I hesitate always to do that, because I know right now they're out inspecting marinas right now with some pretty hefty fines. We went through a MyOSHA one about 8 years ago ourselves at the marina. But what we have to find out, when you buy them, they're on there. This has got a high and a low. We're on the low, believe it or not, the beeper noise. I don't know whether there's a decibel, rating, because again, as somebody pointed out, I think it was the condo owner, you're not inside a noisy factory, so how loud does it have to be? The other thing he found online is one that, has the sonar type of backup thing that, maybe it could be delayed until somebody's back there, that if you're backing up, if there's nobody there, and so that all might be a possibility, but at this time, I haven't been able to find that out. All I've done is a little bit of research on the internet, but I think what it's gonna take is getting to OSHA and finding out about things like, is there a specified decibel level? We talked to the dealer on these, and he really wasn't able to give us the answer. So any of that I could do, I'd obviously do. We have to have some audible, which even the condo owner agreed, yeah, you've got to do that. I mean, he looked up and sent me statistics on forklift accidents and what a high percentage rate there are. And he says, yeah, after seeing those, I fully understand why they would require that. But again, if there's something I can find out and we can be within the law, I'm certainly willing to do that, because again, every one of my boat wells are within that, even though there doesn't seem to be a problem, people calling in, like there are from the house. You know, evidently, you know, I mean, if we can make it lower and still be safe, I'm all for it. But at this time, I can't, Dean, give you a, you know, whether that's possible or not.
Has
I've
there
got
ever
a-
been any incidents with accidents or anything since you've owned the marina?
No, we've never, again, knock on wood, we've never had an accident. I think even with a car, the only one we had was up at the turn where the building number 2 is the service building. Somebody cut that too close, and it happened to be Jim Krause's wife that was coming around that got clipped. And that's the only one I can remember in all the years I've been there. But indeed, we are always worried about that. You know, last year, we purchased some removable bumper strips, you know, out there, because people just, they go too fast. And we've got a lot of kids out there. It's a family marina, and the kids tend to walk out in the streets. We don't have, you know, really sidewalks that work that well. There are sidewalks, but it's closer to the water, and they got grills on them, so they tend to walk in the street. And I bought a bunch more that we're going to install this year. We can't keep them down year-round, so I had to get something that we could pick up, because with our low rider trailers, we can't get over those when we're hauling boats. So every year in the fall, we got to take those up so we can get the boats where they have to go from the hoist area. So we're very safety conscious on that stuff, and, you know, again, but I'm pretty easy to work with. If there's another way around it, you know, that we're both happy, I'd certainly like to do that, but I got to make sure I'm within the law on that, because I know OSHA, I talked to one marina owner that just got in, and there was a fine. They had, his guys had lifted up a guard on a bandsaw and fined $7,000 per piece of wood that they cut while it was up. So, I mean, it's very drastic when those people come in, so I got to make sure I'm in compliance.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, members?
Yeah, to the applicant. Have you been provided the March 20th letter from Community Planning and Management?
I just got that tonight.
Are you prepared to speak to the 5 items tonight, or?
Really didn't even get a chance to look at it, talked to Pat a little bit. The parking spaces, again, Jim mentioned that. I didn't bring that because we've done it before, but, you know, we've got hundreds of parking spaces there. What we do is we allocate building number 5, and then on the south side of every building going down, those are all guest parking spaces. You know, everyone that we have, the parking problems that I have are people that are parking in spaces that belong to slips that are rented or condo owned. You know, we've never had problems overall where we didn't have parking spaces, other than early on in the 4th of July, before I started limiting how many people would come in, and they invited everybody out for the fireworks. But other than that, we do not have a problem where we never have parking. So parking's not a problem on that. And again, you know, I would think that of those boats coming in, a lot of those are going to be second boats for the people that are already there. The enclosed thing, you know, again, you know, I guess the question is it doesn't say completely enclosed. You know, again, even on the building we have, the 2 doors are there and they're open the whole time that it's working. You know, so if somebody's looking in, they're going to see the boats and the racks in there, you know, too, for right now, the way it is. You know, the other ones that are up in the Harrison Township right now, whether they came before or not, are enclosed on 3 sides and, you know, of the building. That's how they do it. I guess, you know, probably from a tax standpoint, it would be, even with 3 sides, it would be coded as a building for the property taxes basis. So I don't know. I can't answer that. Again, that was the first I heard of it was today. Impact circulation, are we talking, I guess I'm not even sure. Pat, could you tell me circulation, what do you mean by?
Well, that was just a comment indicating that we had no problem.
Oh, okay, it does not. Okay, it wasn't a question of that. I guess basically, we're reading it, just the first 2 were questions, are the only 2 on this, or?
Items 1, 4, and 5 really had to be addressed by the commission.
Okay. Yeah, and that was, again, I didn't remember that it was a ZBA thing until I looked it up for Sabrina. So, you know, that's when I found out about that. And the H standards, again, it's a question of, you know, like I said, that's a piece of marina equipment that's used in that building. It's also used elsewhere. And again, because we're a marina, we need that type of equipment because we're moving big boats. You know, there isn't a choice to get something else, really. That's the type of equipment that you have to have when you're operating a marina.
Mr.
Just
Fox,
to-
I'm sorry.
can I follow
Go
up
ahead.
with that then?
Yes, please.
Towards the end of that document, without me reading the recommendation, the recommendation does indicate, as we've suggested here, that per section 13.38, that there are some items that are inconsistent with that section of the ordinance. And then, I guess to put clarity to it, Pat, it's specifically your commentary to item number 1 in your letter, and item number 4 would be the issues that are in non-compliance with 13.38.
Yeah, that's correct. You know, in addition, if the commission finds anything inconsistent with the 8 standards for special use.
Yes.
Mr. Foster, knowing that this is not part of the ordinance, I'm going to ask this question anyway. Are you able to address the use, the number of times potential that boats will be in and out of that rack storage on a daily basis?
Of the additional 12,
The additional 12?
and in most cases, and again, it's hard, it depends on how often those people are out, but during the week, it's obviously, our volume is way down. It's primarily weekend usage. You know, and again, if you use that, pretty much about the 25% rule, you know, I would think that probably we're gonna be looking somewhere around 4 trips a day out there. But again, you might have the same situation. I mean, just to be fair, that person might come out, go over to the east side, go on a side rack to wash his boat or whatever, and, you know, then go back or go in and be launched. So, again, I could be having them, you know, not even be going in the water, that we'd have to get them out and put them over on the east side rack for either a service person or for them to wash a boat or whatever. So it's not only the time that it goes in to be used in the water, it could be for service also.
So 12 racks, potentially 24 times.
I think that would be very high, that, you know, on any weekend day, I doubt that, you know, you're gonna have, they wouldn't be coming twice. You know, you might have a couple of them that you'd have that one extra run over to the side. But, you know, again, I think if, even if you said that all of them were gonna use it every weekend, you might have 12 a day, but I don't think you're gonna find that.
And did you indicate, I don't know if I wrote this down, did you indicate the usage of the 108?
Yeah, it's, like I say, even on the busiest weekend, 25% is all that we ever have out at one time in there. And a couple of the comments in there, that some of the condo owners that had a boat in there, a couple of them made the same comments in there about what they found as far as usage of boats in there. We don't allow them to call in ahead of time, you know, so they just come out, they park over on the west side of the building, over on the northwest corner, unload their stuff. One person goes back into the building 5 to park and walk back across, and they let the guy know while they're unloading, they put the boat in. And they made some comment in like that it's almost never do they have 2 people waiting to get a boat in at any one time. So it's a lot less busy than what people think it would be for that many boats.
For a standard-sized boat that you store inside building number 4, how long does it take to in and out a boat? The time that it takes for the actual forklift to be in operation?
I think that they use about a 10-minute rule. It doesn't generally take that long, but that's what they tell the customers. You know, they basically go over, they have to get in, they back it out, then they come over and they drop it. So they're not going very far, from the building. So
And is it fair to say that half of that time is in reverse?
probably about that.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're going in and they're backing up and going, and then they have to back it back into the building, so yes. And the other thing I might mention too is just on timing. Again, we've tried to restrict that as much as we can without getting a rebellion from the people that are in there. And on Fridays through Sundays during the season, we keep it open till 10 at night. During the other days, Monday through Thursday, it's open till 8. Then before Memorial Day weekend and after Labor Day until we shut it down, which is September 30th, but we're moving some boats to the side yet to be winterized for the next 15 days in October. Then it's from 8:15 to 6 in the morning. They open up at 8. So what we've done is we allow people to call in before we close, and if they want to go out, let's say they're fishermen, they want to go out late at night, or they want to get up and then go really early next morning, we then put it out for them if they call, and we do have slips out in front that we can put them in, tie up the boat, so that way if he wants to come at midnight to go out fishing, the boat will just be in front. And the same way if the guy wants to come at 6 o'clock in the morning, he takes the boat out at that point in time. Whatever's there in the morning, then we put away,
But you don't have 12 outdoor spaces in the water for these 12 boats?
What they want
At
is
one
they want to
time.
be out of the water. That's why they're going into that. They want it to be out of the water and the boat to stay clean. That's the difference. And most of these are day boaters or fishermen. That's how those boats are being used. They don't spend the nights at the marina and that sort of thing.
Thank you.
When you put the boats into the water, where do you do that at?
It's on the north side of the building, through the big door on the north side, and that's where the slips are. There's one real long slip, if you can see it in the picture, and on the right-hand side, that's where they launch, and then they come back in and they get taken out on the left side of that long slip.
Okay. So you have like 1, 2, 3, 4 slips for going out and 2 for coming in?
Well, you've got the long one there, and I think I'm just talking about the long one when I'm saying left and right. They line up that way. But the other ones, I believe there's 5 other catwalks out behind there, which would be 10 boats that could handle. So, and we've never had those full for, people calling in. They just don't have that many, maybe got a couple of them.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Foster, a couple of questions. On number 4, on the March 20th letter, there's an assumption made that a variance has already been granted. Is that assumption not correct?
That,
It's talking
which
about
letter
the
is it?
30-foot variance previously, and the building that's proposed exceeds the 30-foot, and the exact wording is we assume the variance has already been granted. I believe I heard Mr. Senstock say that a variance would be needed.
But
I'm just
that's-
asking you whether the variance has yet been granted, and if not, what the status of that is.
Yeah, again, I didn't know for sure on that, and I didn't know until, a couple weeks ago that this came up, and I looked up the dates in there, so, again, it's only been that amount of time that, was pointed out that, we did have a variance on that building. I didn't honestly remember, because I wasn't the one that went through all this, so, until I looked it up, and that was a little close to this to, I guess, change anything, so we went through and find out what we have to do from here.
Okay, so that's still an open issue.
Yeah.
On number 1, and I'm looking at the section 13.38, B1, and specifically the requirement that to be enclosed, the word enclosed is used. And I thought I heard when you were talking about this, that you were making a difference between enclosed and completely enclosed?
Well, I'm just wondering,
you
because
explain
you've got at least 3 others in the township that are like that. So it also says all storage racks have to be in a building, and that's not being done anywhere throughout the township either. I mean, again, if it's sitting out, what's the difference if it's sitting on land, on shoring, or on a rack? Or on jack stands, or, whatever. Or is this telling us that for a marina that you can't have boats outside of buildings?
Okay, so is your position that despite the wording of 13.3.8, other marinas in the township are not enclosed, and therefore that should apply to you? Or are you saying that the wording enclosed isn't totally enclosed, that it means something else?
Well, I guess this was pointed out to me at 4 o'clock today, so, you know, that was the first time I got this language, so I don't know. I guess that was my one question is, you know, is it totally enclosed or is it enclosed? You know, I mean, same thing in our building, you know, both those big doors are open at both ends all day during the operation. You know, so I guess I'm just questioning on a waterfront zoning, when you have a marina, the marina's business, the primary business of any marina is storage of boats. Whether you're storing them in the water, on land, in buildings, on racks, on shoring, you know, I mean, they can't survive if you can't store boats. You know, so it's just, to me, it's a very questionable, you know, ordinance within the waterfront zoning. That's just my general comment on it.
Okay, thank you, that's fair. And the last question, on this noise, has there been any testing either by MIOSHA or privately on the noise levels?
No.
Okay.
You know, what we're doing is we take what the factory, you know, gave us, and there were 2 switches on there, I guess, high and low. We got on low. You know, so I just always made the assumption that OSHA was telling them what they had to have on these machines, because that's what you're buying. But when MIOSHA came out, nothing came up on the on that equipment at all. They didn't even look at it, as far as I know. So
Okay.
we've not had anybody else other than MIOSHA come out and do an audit of the marina in the time I've been there.
Now, that noise level can be tested, can it not?
Yeah, well, that's what I was explaining to Dean is, you know, maybe we can find out from OSHA, you know, decibel levels or something that we could test, but right now I don't know what those are. So I think that's the next step, if there's anything we can do with the noise on that machine, is find out what can we do within the law.
Okay.
So I'm willing to look into that, but at this point, I don't know what it is, I gotta find out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, members, any other comments or questions? Mr. Foster, any other information that you would like to present?
No, I think, you know, I've given you pretty much everything in the packet, so.
Okay. And anyone else like to make a comment? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Foster. Well, I can share this. I did do some investigating on the open three-sided building storage that's currently present at, I think it's Hideaway Cove Marina. And that building was built in 1966, and the addition was added in 1985. I don't know what the ordinance was back in 1985, but I know what it is today, so I can't take that into consideration. Okay, do we want to talk about keeping the public hearing open? Do we want to make a motion to close it this evening? Do we want to continue with discussion?
Madam Chair, I don't see where there would be a problem with leaving the public hearing open until next month meeting. I don't think we're prepared to make a decision on this tonight anyway, so I would go along with leaving it open.
Okay. So is that in the form of a motion?
I can do that, yes.
Okay, so,
I make a motion to leave the public hearing for case number 05-14-SLU open until the April 17th, 2014 meeting.
I have a motion to keep the public hearing open until April 17th. Do I have a second, please?
Madam Chair, I would like to ask a question on that. I've heard the request that we leave it open from a citizen. I'm not sure I've heard the applicant's position on leaving it open.
Well, we have a motion, so we have to finish that.
Okay.
We have to finish that first, and then we can take discussion.
I'd be willing to support if the motion were amended to make the reference to allow the applicant the opportunity to either amend the current plan or seek variances consistent with section 13.38.
And did you want to specifically address the variances as in and out access and height? Or just all of the items listed in 13.38 relative to the plan as it's submitted today?
I'd prefer just to leave it open to say 13.38.
Okay,
Which then also would address all of the 5 items on community plans.
okay.
Yes, I would amend the motion to add that, please.
Okay, so we have a motion to leave the public hearing open, to allow the applicant time to seek variance, any and all variances referenced in section 13.38, and address the items listed in the planner's letter.
Well, I don't think
No.
we're not allowing any time for variances or anything to address.
To address, not to
the
seek.
issues.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
what I
To
said
address.
was the opportunity to either amend the plan consistent with the ordinance, if
Okay.
that is the applicant's choice,
Okay,
or to allow the applicant to seek variances.
okay, so to amend the plan or seek variance?
Yeah, I guess it should have been said to amend the plan to be consistent with section 13.38 or seek variances as necessary.
Okay,
Would
got it.
probably be the better way of stating our objective here.
Okay, got it. Okay, I have a motion and I have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, please, Mr. Bloom.
Sure, Member Falk,
Yes.
Member Batchor,
Yes.
Member Bloom, yes. Member Olgiati,
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes. Okay, public case will remain open until April 17th. We'll see you then, Mr. Foster, thank you. Okay, if you could just give us a second to clear our paperwork and prepare for the next item.
Excuse me for one moment.
And I don't have my plans in front of me, so I'm gonna share yours. I don't have my plans in front of me,
Oh, yeah,
so
that's fine.
if you're gonna open yours, I will peek on yours. Okay, Mr. Bloom, will you please read our next item?
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'll look through the, get ready.
The next item for tonight in unfinished business is case number 01-14-RZ, Harbor Point of Harrison LLC, 16 Mile and Jefferson, Harrison Township, zoned B3 and R1C, to rezone all 3 properties to RM3 for proposed condominiums. And it's noted that the public hearing was closed at the February 20th, 2014 meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Mr. Caradona?
Good evening.
Hi. Is there any information you would, any questions, comments?
We'd just like to thank you for taking all the time, and I'd just like to speak again that our plan, if we are rezoned, is in compliance. It is a conditional zoning. We did hear from a lot of the homeowners and people in the area, and we've taken that into consideration, but we still feel that this is a good site. We'd ask you to vote on it tonight, whether to approve or deny, and that a lot of the comments that were said, I don't think were against the circulation of the project, or that our roads were wrong, or that the buildings were ugly, or that the roof color was wrong. It was just more that it affected them personally, whether it be their home value, whether they thought it might bring more people into the school district, it might add more traffic, It might bring a different amount of people or to the area. So I just ask that you guys look at it, that it's a project. The master plan did ask for multifamily in this area. That's why we came with this site, because we're trying to abide by the master plan. When you ask for rezoning, one of the questions is, are you in compliance with the master plan? And that's why we came in with this, so. Other than that, we thank you again for your time and all the consultants, and hope that we can build something in your community soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Let this be known that the applicant has proposed to build, I believe it's 8 buildings, 120 separate units, 2-story condos. The site currently contains single-family residential bordered by 2 B3 business commercial zones. The applicant is requesting that all 3 be rezoned multiple family residential at the highest density. It's our job tonight to only make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees whether this rezoning take place or not. It's not our decision to approve it, just to make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees. So with that, questions from the board members?
Madam Chair, on that last point, on the recommendation board, and just for clarification, would it be a decision to either recommend it to the board to approve or not make that recommendation? Or would it also be a choice to recommend to the board that it be denied?
It is our job to recommend to the board approval or denial.
Okay, thank you.
And then if I could just state also, it is true that our master plan does indicate multiple family residential as a future plan for a portion of that site. Just the center portion that is currently zoned single-family residential. Our master plan does indicate that the 2 commercial properties that flank this centerpiece remain as commercial business. Yes, please.
The 2 pieces that do flank that are business are very small in proportion. I believe those are approximately less than 2 acres between the 2 of them. And the one piece that does flank to the south is an irregular shaped piece of property that'd be very difficult to develop pretty much under any zoning. We could almost leave that piece. I'm not sure how it would affect the plan, but we're just putting our detention pond there, so it's not like we're actually building anything on that spot at this time anyways. So, and then we did supply a letter to the Planning Commission that we did market this for commercial use with Signature Associates, Victor Jonai, for many years and months, and we were unable, whether we tried to get, we met with Tim Hortons, we've met with Dunkin' Donuts, we had Atlas Fuels gas station. We offered very, very cheap rent to try and keep that corner as a business. We actually wanted it to be that way. And again, it did not, us rezoning that piece did not actually add units to the site. It just created a nicer site plan, more space, more green space within the community. And we are asking for a conditional or a contract zoning, which does limit this rezoning to the amount of units and the site plan and buildings that we've provided, which are high-end condos, in our opinion. And although you said it's the maximum zoning under that, we are not using the maximum number of units allowed under that zoning. We are still less than the maximum allowed by our acreage. Thank you.
Mr. Cardone. Okay, board members, any questions for the applicant or comments? Or a motion?
Madam Chair, at the end of our last meeting, it was brought up to the applicant to take a look at the comments from Wade Trim and also the comments from community planners. And I was hoping that there would be input to those items brought back, and because on each of those documents, there's a lot of open items, a lot of issues on there. And I don't see any response or any reply to either of those documents.
Well, most of the comments, especially from Wade Trim, those are items that would be addressed later in the development process, typically through engineering and studies that would have to be done. And a lot of the expense through Wade Trim are items that would be incorporated into final engineering plans. It'd be cost prohibitive to answer a lot of those questions and do the design required if we weren't going to get an approval through the board ultimately and a recommendation from you. Our engineer, we did go actually, I think, line by line through most of the planner's comments, which are integrated into our plan. And when we resubmitted that plan to you guys, we addressed pretty much all of those. So if there's some items that are still outstanding, I'm not sure. But after our first public hearing, we did resubmit some updated plans and addressed most of those comments that were from the planner that we could.
Okay.
And as it relates to Wade Trim, I believe that it is, most of your comments are normal. They would be addressed between our engineer and you guys during furtherance of the project, or?
Madam Chairman, I was a plan question. Actually, I'm not of the same opinion. The comments that we make on this are typically at a preliminary stage. We're looking at schematic layouts and whatnot. We don't ask for final engineering like on the storm sewer and that type of thing. But we are looking for things like, is this development going to work? Do they have enough area for the storage, for the stormwater? Do they have adequate facilities for sanitary and water main provided? Those types of things. And there were several comments in our letter that pertain to those. The availability and the capacity to sanitary sewer was a big one. The outlet for the stormwater was a big issue. The fact that a good portion of the site is within the floodplain and it's going to require a significant amount of fill. I think those are comments that from a large scale, like 30,000-foot overview look, you look at those and you say, geez, we need to overcome these hurdles before we can say that preliminarily this plan has merit and it's going to work. And so that's the type of review that we're doing at this level, is just to see if things are going to work and if they're generally in conformance. We're not doing a detailed engineering review at this time, but some of those kind of big picture issues I think do need to be addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Nimmer.
As it relates to those issues, we did address at the last meeting. I mean, the township currently in this area has absolutely no capacity for any site. So we did pay for a study at our own expense that did show that there's capacity in the pipes, but not in the pumps. And we did offer, upon approval of this plan, that we would pay for the improvements to the site or compromise. We do have adequate stormwater storage on site, according to our calculations, and we have several options for an outlet. And again, we just haven't decided which one to choose. There's some that could be going into the canals, which would be adamantly approved, and we have some other ones that are available to us, whether it be through a pump station and going up the road to different areas or into the marsh areas. So we do have options to handle all of those concerns in the future. And again, if I was in here trying to build one house right now on this property, I wouldn't be able to do that. So I think that regardless of site plan, we have to address the sewer issue. And again, as I stated last time, the reason for the density that we're seeking is because of the expense of having to address those issues. Adding capacity to the pump station, which is needed in the community, and not just to address our site, but to solve problems that are pre-existing and allow capacity for future development. And, you know, at that point, I believe our engineer has done his job to do the calculations, and we feel that our storm water is there and that our grading plan would get us out of the floodplains. We've had some preliminary studies, and that we can do a map amendment after the grades are done and be out of the floodplain. So.
Thank you.
Well, when I look at item number 7, that you're from your reply on January 16th, you're saying that all utilities are at site and we have committed to cooperating with the municipality for our portion of the well-needed sewer pump upgrade. your portion is 100%.
Well, of course, at this time, if we put in a new pump, I mean, I believe the way to rectify this is to upgrade the pumps. So by upgrading the pumps, it's not like I can just buy half a pump. I would have to purchase an entire new pump that would have enough capacity to accommodate our site.
But to me, that, when you say for your portion, that kind of leaves it ambiguous to me as far as what portion is yours and what portion is the township's. And with this being a conditional,
Sure.
what we have in writing is what we're approving, and if this is what you're gonna stay with, then
I think the intent of that statement was not to say our portion financially, but that we would agree to improve the facilities that are needed to cover our portion or our needs for the site. The amount of, I believe it goes by CFM of flow that was created by our site, we would increase the pumps. And typically what happens is they make pumps that go, size 10 horsepower, 100,000. So if we fall in that right now, to get the 120 units, it says that we have to do maybe we only need a 3 horsepower upgrade. They don't typically sell we're not gonna go buy a 13 horsepower pump. We'd buy the next one that they sell. From my understanding, it would, ultimately, we've had some other discussions with the, township board and some other people about that. When we do this, we would typically do some kind of an upgrade that would, you don't just, if we needed 120, there'd be an allowance for like 200, because you have to give, I guess, extra percentage of flow, on top of what you need, just for an abundance of caution. So.
and not to be rude to the township board or anything like that, but them not being here, it
I
not being in
understand.
writing, that doesn't mean anything to me.
The ultimate agreement, again, you guys are a recommending board, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Kirk, the ultimate agreement is a legal document that's drafted between the attorneys, our attorney and the township attorney, in a contract zoning. I mean, is it a more, I'd imagine it would come in a more formalized document than just what I wrote. Those were kind of comments that we put. Our intention, and if you were to recommend an approval, you could always recommend something to clarify the language that makes you comfortable. But, I've said here, and we are on the record, that we are looking to do the improvements at our expense, 100%, for this project, as long as we get approved, and that would be the pump station improvements that are needed as recommended by the report that we had done.
I don't know, there's just seems so many when I go through these documents. If I go through, I see portions in this papers, and to me, this is, from what I understand, this is conditional rezoning. So the conditions are in writing, and to me, I'm recommending an approval or denial based on the documents that I have in front of me, unless we're to table this to allow the applicant to go back and update these documents. These documents here talk about allowing the storm drain to go into the Lake St. Clair Metro Park. That's what these documents say. Totally opposed to that. The Metro Park is spending a bunch of money to redo their parking structure to be more eco-friendly, to be more self-contained and everything. And the thought of, per these documents, saying that you're gonna run off into the Metro Park with no approval or conversation from the Metro Park is just, that's unheard of and unacceptable.
That's not our only option, and we do have other options. We can put a pump station in and pump to the nearest drain through a force main along the right-of-ways. Our pond is rather large on the site, our detention basin. I believe we're holding like 100-year floodwater. So it's gonna be a wet pond, it's gonna be used as a decorative feature. And if we were to discharge into the Huron, Clinton, I think it's the HCMA authority, we have been talking with consultants and people. That would be done in a manner that would be beneficial to them. The only time they would take our water is if it was approved by the DEQ, by them, and there'd be sediment controls, there'd be multiple things put in place to do that, that would be a benefit to them. It wouldn't be a hindrance. So we're, although that is one of the things, again, we're here as a contractor, conditional zoning. I don't believe in my conditional letter, which is what's there, it's our plans, that is not one of the conditions. We still have to meet all of your engineering. We have to get Drain Commission, DEQ, state permits, everything to go anywhere with our water. So what we're seeking is your approval or your recommendation for approval to limit what was those items on our list, which is that I won't build 150 units. I'm not going to switch this building and build an uglier unit with all one bedrooms and no garages. The intent of this was to come in and give you some comfort that I'm not going to seek and promise you that I'm building, you know, a condominium unit and then come in with some kind of a row housing project. So I think that although some of those things are things we've brought up because the plans require it, they ultimately need engineering. And that the conditions are those that are listed on my letter, which is that it's this building with this certain amount of square footage, it's this typical elevation, it's this site plan, it's this clubhouse. You know, that we will pay for the improvements for the pump station if we're approved. But as it relates to whether you recommended us or not, I would not be able, simply because you made a recommendation for approval, to go past any other authorities and go ahead and discharge water anywhere or tap the sanitary sewer, do anything. I mean, and that isn't the intent of our letter. I don't believe the letter we attached says that. It's only conditioning it to that particular site plan and that particular building. And that's our intention, so you know exactly what you're getting, and you don't rezone me and I come in and bring a lesser product down the road.
Now, can somebody at this table over here tell me, is this true, or are these documents that we have here either, in my opinion, they're wrong or they're incomplete? Or is this info that will be nailed out between this table and the applicant?
The rezoning application in front of you contains the conditions as listed in the application. The conditions in that application and the rezoning designation itself are the only things you'll be recommending at this point in time. It will not exempt them from all other township ordinances and requirements.
Okay, so the pumps and the sewer drain off or the storm drain, we don't have to be overly concerned on, and you guys will handle that.
Well, that's something that would be addressed during the engineering phase, but I think the concern right now, the engineer is indicating, and I don't want to speak for him, but from what I understand, he's saying, you know, there's a question as to whether or not we have the capacity to service this at this point, but, you know,
Yeah, I think that the issues of the sanitary sewer, as the applicant has indicated, they did pay for the study to get the study done to determine what needed to be done. I didn't see anything in the documents indicating that they were going to pay for the improvements. I guess that was my holdup on that issue. There's nothing in the documents that I was provided that says that they're going to handle that. I guess if that was there, I'd have a higher comfort level that issue is going to be taken care of. The outlet of the stormwater, the plans are showing that they're outletting it to the Metro Park. There are other options that they could do. I guess I don't know at this point how much of this particular site plan, since that's one of the conditions, how far that carries forward. For example, if they're not allowed to discharge to the Metro Parks, if that's going to have an adverse impact on the site plan or not, I can't tell you that. The issue with the floodplains really hasn't been addressed at all yet. Typically, when you're placing fill into a floodplain, you have to provide compensating storage so that you don't raise the flood level for somebody else. If you put a bunch of dirt into the floodplain, the water can't go there, the water has to find another place to go. So there hasn't been any talk or any discussion about how that compensating storage is going to be provided. And lacking that, it appears to me that half the buildings that required that fill to be built can't be built unless they provide the storage, the compensating storage. So, you know, if the planning commission looked at me and said, Dave, can they build this site plan the way that it's laid out? My answer is, I don't know. I can't tell you for sure if they can build it this way or not, based on the information that they provided.
Yeah, the other thing is, as we mentioned before, if you are approving it like this, if for some reason I am unable to get a storm discharge, or we don't upgrade the pump station, or we can't get that compensating fill, and it isn't this site plan, we came in and had to rearrange it, then what you guys approved as, with this zoning would be, either have to be amended in front of you again, or it would be worthless. I mean, the rezoning would basically be taken away. But again, we have done our homework, and we believe that we are able to build this site plan. We wouldn't come before you if we didn't. We've had conversations with other, you know, the FEMA and other people as it relates to this. And our calculations, according to my engineer who's not here this evening, are that he is compensating for the offset of that water from the fill with our larger size detention basin. And, you know, again, all of your concerns are, if I can't get an outlet, which means my pond has to be bigger. Well, if I don't get a storm outlet from them and I don't find an alternative outlet, we can't build the site. I mean, so I think, again, as it relates to that, if we have to modify, and I think Pat will say, typically it works on these conditional. If I can't build this site as it is, because of something we can't accomplish down the road, then our rezoning goes back to what the property was.
Madam Chairman, I think we're looking at two different items. We talked about some type of an agreement. This type of contract zoning doesn't involve a development agreement like a PUD. You only look at the zoning. If they did rezone it, as he said, it's only for that purpose. He has to build that. Now, if you go through engineering and the pond has to be bigger and you lose half a building, then it's no longer valid. So we're not going into an agreement as to the pumps. This isn't a development agreement or a PUD. It's just a straight rezoning. I want it rezoned. Here's how I'm going to build it. If he can't build it that way, he's out of luck.
Thank you. Well, we know today that the plans that are before us, they don't meet our requirements. They don't meet our ordinances as they are today. The buildings are too large, too tall. So we already know you can't build this. We already know, without seeking variances or moving forward in another direction. So, any other questions for the applicant? Are we ready to make a motion? Our job is to recommend or not recommend rezoning of 3 parcels of property, 2 being commercial, 1 being single family, all 3 rezoned to multiple family at the highest density.
Madam Chair, I'd like to speak to the
Actually, our public hearing is already closed, Mr. Rice. We will have discussion when we do make our motion, though. Okay? Thank you, Mr. Rice. I know it's a lot of information. We had 2 public hearings. We heard a lot of residents.
Question for Mr. Maher. Before us are 10 issues that we have traditionally reviewed as part of rezoning. So the data that we're being asked to evaluate has consistently been the same data that we've used in the past. Is there value? I mean, it's certainly part of the record, so anybody can certainly research what those 11 items are. The applicant knows they are because your letter responds to the 11 items, so you don't need to do it for your benefit. I certainly respect that. Is there value for us as this board to just restate what they are so it's well understood, or is there just enough to say we acknowledge we have them, they're consistent with the standards we've always used in the past? Is that enough for us just to acknowledge?
You know, I think the standards are listed, not all of them are applicable for every rezoning. I think what's important is that each of you use them as a basis for balancing your recommendation to the township board. And, you know, in some cases, you may say, well, this particular issue has more weight than this particular issue because of the impacts, the potential impacts associated with it. And, you know, so I guess what I would say is in terms of making a motion, you would want to call out those things you find most important. You know, if in fact it's the conditions that concern you, I think that, you know, that ought to be one of the rationales for, if it's the conditions that make you comfortable, I think that ought to be a rationale. So, you know, if there's a particular item, whether it be a utility capacity or it be, you know, you like the site plan layout or, you know, whatever the facts are, you know, that's what I would recommend you base your decision on.
May I ask one question?
Certainly, thank you. I was taking the question maybe just a little bit more benign, that we got these 11 items, and we certainly, all of us will either have consensus on if an issue is relevant or not, if the conditions of that issue have been satisfied or not. There could be disagreement amongst all of us. Where I was just starting my conversation is there are 11 items that we've seen in the past. You know, we understand it. There's nothing new as it pertains to it. Is there any relevance to just having the chairperson restate what they are publicly, or is it just enough to be said that we have them, they're a matter of public record, and those 11 items are items we're considering as part of rezoning? Is that sufficient, my latter half of my statement?
Well, I'll say it's sufficient. You know, the question is for each of you, if it helps you make a decision, then I would certainly encourage you to run through each of them.
Certainly.
If we have discussion on it, you're saying then?
Yeah.
I mean,
I was where I was fishing, do we need to do it for public understanding that this is what we're considering, was where I was going. But you've answered that it's not necessary, as long as we know what they are, and we use them for our conversation relative to the relevance to this particular case, and if it's being satisfied to our satisfaction in order to address the case.
Madam Chair, may
Yes,
I
sir.
ask Mr. Maher a question in regards to your comment about the ordinance?
Yes.
I may be mixing up because this is not a PUD, and sometimes the contract zoning, one of the conditions of the contract, I did state that I know my building is over the ordinance width and height. Is it sufficient that as part of the contract zoning, they approve a recommendation, or would we still need to seek a variance for that separately? I know under like a PUD situation, you could approve it, those variances as part of the plan, but in this situation, is that something that can be done in the contract zoning, or does that need, if they were to recommend